Hi everyone, welcome to the Women in Control live virtual panel. My name is Nadia and I'm the founder of Women in Control. I've been working in the music industry for over 19 years and I've worked 16 years of those as an independent music manager. And I started Women in Control 3 years ago now. And the reason why I started it was, first of all, I wanted to empower myself and other women that I found were working in the music industry, incredible women that I didn't feel were being championed enough and also weren't shouting out about their own achievements enough as well. So I really wanted to create a platform to do that. And I also really wanted to inspire more of a community amongst women to share our experiences and create some more awareness of issues. I've realized that once I started to talk to women and share maybe experiences that I had that I thought I felt embarrassed about or didn't want to talk about, I felt like actually many women had been through the same things and related to that, and that really helped me overcome those. And the second reason why I started Women in Control was also to inspire any women that are looking to work into the music industry, different job roles that you can get, particularly driving women towards, I guess, typically male-dominated job roles like management, tour production, tour management, and video directing as well, and also to create role models for anyone who's looking to work in the music industry. I think it's really important. So today's panel is something that's really close to me, obviously, and I'm really passionate about, and it's all about breaking the glass ceiling and how we can build the next generation of female leaders, how we can move women up the ladder to the top leadership roles, and also how I want to talk about like gender diversity and equality across the music industry as a whole, within artists, and what other opportunities we can do and what we can do to change that. I'm really, really excited about today's selection of panelists. I'm really honored and humbled that you all agreed to come on to my platform today. And yeah, I'm going to introduce you guys before I hand over to you. So my first panelist is Alison Wenham, OBE, and Alison won't know this, but she's actually my first role model within the music industry. I saw you speak a number of years ago at the Music Week Awards, and having been in the industry for so long, when I started out, I didn't have any women female role models that I could look up to, and I was just so inspired and motivated by hearing you speak. And obviously you've held you know, multiple CEO roles, and you've got so much experience in the industry, and you've also been really vocal about gender diversity, and so I'm so appreciative of you being here. And my second panelist is Maxi from PRS Foundation, and Maxi's been really passionate about supporting underrepresented voices within the music industry, and through her work is now project managing Key Change, which we'll talk about in the session as well, which is an international initiative to create opportunities for developing talent across the world. And my third panelist is Vic Bain, who is the author of an influential report called Counting the Music Industry, which was released in October 2019. And through the report, you uncovered some really interesting statistics which show us the current situation in the music industry, which was quite shocking, but I feel like you've done it in such an empowering way to actually prove it in black and white with the data there. And it's really, through your work and your campaigning and talking about it, you've really driven a lot of awareness to the topic and how we can start to action change. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And I'd love to hand over to you all to introduce yourselves and let us know a bit about who you are. So I don't know, Maxi, do you want to start us off?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here today with all of you too. What a panel. So yeah, I'm Maxi. Hey everyone. I currently work at PRS Foundation in communications and as the Key Change project manager in the UK. I started my music career in bands as a musician. So I made an album when I was like 18 with the late great Andy Gill from Gang of Four. And I grew up in the Norwich music scene, which was a kind of supportive little bubble that had loads of rad women as kind of central to it. But it's quite insular. So early on, a big part of what I was doing in music, it was kind of supporting underrepresented voices regionally, in terms of women in music, from the LGBTQ+ scene, to kind of be heard on a national or international level. So I started a musical collective called Gravy, which is a label. We put on shows, we made zines, and I still run that with 3 rad women in music based in Norwich and London. I did a master's in sonic arts, and the reason I mention that is because my kind of creativity and my own practice has always been a huge driver for my professional work. And has kind of always existed alongside what I'm doing at PRS Foundation or otherwise. So I started working in talent development at Cecil Sharp House in folk music, actually. And then I started at PRS Foundation about 4 years ago. So I started working on Key Change in September last year. But in my work at PRS Foundation, I've been super lucky to work with some rad role models, Paulette Long, Vanessa Reed, Amy LeMay, Steffi Pavlou, and Jane Dybel, just to name a few, have all been kind of close mentor kind of roles to me. And yeah, have really empowered me to kind of develop my voice. So I'm still on my journey in leadership, and I'm currently, I run a lesbian club night called Twat Boutique, and I play drums in 2 bands. So I kind of do a lot to kind of support talent development in different ways, both with artists and industry professionals too.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, Vic, do you want to go next?
Okay. Well, I've been in various parts of the music industry for 25 years now, and like Maxi, I started off as a musician, a singer, and did lots of sort of interesting work with an experimental composer called Robin Story. We put out numerous albums, and yeah, that was all very interesting, but it didn't pay the bills. So when I moved to London in '97, you know, I ended up working in record stores and working in music venues. I was at the Royal Festival Hall for a while, and eventually I ended up at BASCA, so the British Academy of Songwriters, Composers and Authors, now known as the Ivors Academy. But I was at BASCA for 13 years. So I've worked with songwriters and composers quite extensively. So for six years, I was the chief exec of BASCA. I stepped down a year and a half ago, mainly because I had had some very bad health, and I just wanted a new direction. And I also wanted to really focus on diversity in music. So last autumn, I started a PhD looking at women's careers in the music industry. So I'm going to be doing that for the next few years, and then I'm doing various consulting projects in music around that. But yeah, my passion is women in music, all sorts of women, intersectional women in music. As you mentioned, I published Counting the Music Industry last year, which was a revelation to me as well. And out of that has developed an initiative called the F List, where I've in my research, I had made a record of thousands of female musicians in the UK working right now. So I've published that directory on my website, and that's so that event bookers and festival promoters can find women, and they can't say, I don't know where all the women are. I've asked them all. I've literally got a list of 3,500 female musicians and 2,000 bands with women in them. So festival bookers for when the festivals start again. Fingers crossed as soon as possible. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. And Alison?
Yes, thank you, Nadia, and thank you for inviting me. I'm probably the grandmummy on the call, on the show today, literally and figuratively. I spent 45 years in the music industry, again starting as a pianist and a musician, and then migrating over to the commercial side. So for 25 years, I was on the commercial side of the record industry. And then the last 20 years, I've been representing the independent sector, both nationally and internationally. And obviously during that journey, I spent a lot of time in rooms with lovely men, but only men. It was something that I became more and more aware of as I became more understanding and more experienced about how the industry worked. And when I set up AIM, I made a really brave and bold decision that instead of how other boards were run, which was that people were elected and then stayed on the board, often until they were basically in their dotage, I decided that we should rotate our board so that every year we would have 4 or 5 places free. And it was 4 or 5 years in. Obviously, AIM started in the traditional way with an all-male board. I say traditional, it's not right, but it's the way it was. All-male board, all white, all middle-aged, all middle-class business owners. But in 2004, having this rotation policy where we had 4 or 5 places a year free, I was still looking at an all-male board. And it was then that I realized that this problem ran very, very deep. And it wasn't just about discrimination, it wasn't about exclusion, it was also about our attitudes towards ourselves, and us not seeing ourselves, not believing in ourselves as being relevant or appropriate or entitled to sit in senior positions. So that's when I started to really reach out. And, you know, I think from that time, we've been 14 years on this. You know, when I look now, we've got the Women in Music Awards, we've got a diversity task force, we've got your Women in Control, there's She Said So. There's any number of initiatives. I do public speaking workshops because I think people need to sort of feel that they can speak with confidence in public. And I also think that we are experiencing some very good signs towards what we would like to see. Because let's face it, if you're sitting today in an all-male, possibly all-white board, I mean, how old-fashioned do you look? How outdated do you look? How out of touch with the science of performance that has been mapped many times over around the world? Companies have a responsibility to their shareholders and to their employees and to their artists. And it's demonstrably proven that if you succeed in having a balanced board, you will actually perform better as a company. So I think that keeping this at a less emotional level, I think it's really important to remember that the goal here is to run great businesses, give your artists the best chance of success. And therefore you have to make this journey. You have to do it. End of.
Okay, let's get started. So yeah, I know we've got a lot that we want to cover in the session, but I wanted to kick it off by maybe if each of you could maybe talk about what some of the key issues you feel are the key issues facing women in the music industry today. I don't know who wants to kick us off with that.
Can I say a few things about education pathways? So you know, in my research, it really became quite striking to me that lots and lots of women are wanting to establish careers in the music industry, either as performers or in the business side. The lack of music technology knowledge seems to me that is a very big problem, because even if you you know, if you're a fantastic singer and you look great and all of those things which you know women are required as musicians, you walk into a studio and it's instantly it's a man's domain, and you are therefore putting your musical credibility at the hands of a whole team of men around you. And even amazing women like Adele, if you look at the credits on the songwriting credits and the studio credits for her works, it's all male teams. So I think having some sort of technology, in fact, Maxi, I didn't realize he'd studied sonic arts, you know, having some sort of technology, I call it technology competence, embedded in all music degree programs, I think can go a very long way and give women more control of their music careers, and therefore help them to sustain themselves and give them more confidence. You're talking about confidence, so that's one of my big calls out to music ed, is to embed music technology. It doesn't matter what genre it should be at the heart of every music degree.
And Vic, do you want to talk about as well some of the key findings that you had with the percentages of women signed to publishers and record labels as well in the industry?
It was such a surprise. I mean, I started off doing it because as chief exec of BASCA, we ran the Ivor Novello Awards, and I did an analysis of 64 years worth of winners of those awards, and I discovered only 6% of awards had gone to women, and that's only gone up to 10% since 2010. So there's a real problem with lack of women being supported by the industry in songwriting and composing. So I started off doing this gender audit, looking at all of the rosters of the publishing companies, and found that it's 14% of current rosters. That's works that are in copyright and living composers. 14% are women. So that didn't surprise me too much, having worked in that world for so long. What did surprise me, and this is more Alison's world, is identifying that just less than 20% of signed musicians are women, and I thought it would be higher than that, because I know so many women out there who are musicians, but there's clearly some significant barriers for women being signed to labels and being supported in that way. Now, you can have a DIY career, absolutely. You don't have to be signed to a label, but I think it helps, and I'm sure Alison, having ran and worked in labels for so many decades, is having a team of people around you, having investment, it goes a very long way, and women are not having the same opportunities as men in that direction, and that really needs to be discussed and talked about and improved.
Yeah,
I agree, and I think the work you've done, Vic, is amazing, and I think it needs to be internationalized, because if you look at, for example, radio output, you'll find a similar pattern. That the percentage of women played on the radio is way below where it should be. But until we have the forensic facts, until we can actually show that in the United States or Holland, this is the pattern, you're going to get what is tribal thinking. It's just that the people before this and the people after this did the same thing. You'll find it a great deal. It's a kind of laziness. It's not challenging oneself, if you're in that job, to really confront your herd mentality. And to break any glass ceiling, you've got to break the herd mentality. You've got to challenge those around you and yourself, not to just do the normal thing, because that's where this exclusion starts to creep in, and people are blindsided to it. People don't really see it, and when you challenge people on it, they will give you some fairly tame responses that, oh well, people just like male voices more. You'll get that sort of response. And you just think, well, come on. So I mean, I think you've got a great beginning there, Vic, and I think it needs, and I know it needs to go further and more, and the more we can actually lay the evidence in front of those people who are making decisions around A&R, and also the point you make. Of course, I believe in teams, whether they're labels, record companies, run by artist managers or whatever. And it is often the case that women who feel the glass ceiling pressing down on them, if they're in a larger company and not being allowed to pursue their potential, that an awful lot of women jump ship and start their own companies. We've got loads of brilliant women in the industry just doing their own thing well. And I think that's also a weight of change that will feed into patterns of thinking in the industry that have been allowed to prevail for too long.
I think, it's like confidence and lack of role models is a real issue. And I think that you both, as you both said, it's important to make change on both a micro and a macro level, and really kind of address the barriers that people are facing in the industry. So what I find really sad is that we have evidence that shows that there is the will to participate. So that the stats from Fender that show that 50% of all new instrument buyers are women. And the stats from the UK Music Diversity Report that shows that the entry level of the music industry is the most diverse. But as the career progression goes on, people move on and drop out. And I think that we like in talking, researching more so that we know those stats, and talking about the barriers that people face, like the discrimination and the abuse that exists in the industry. I think like challenging that culture is so important. And obviously from a key change perspective, I think that targets are key as well, just so that we can really start to see change in the boardrooms, on the stages, at every level, so that there's kind of representation and cultural shifts too.
Sorry, somebody's just asked about what I mean about tribal thinking. So I think I might have explained it subsequently in the second half of the sentence, but what I mean by it is safe thinking. I mean that you're thinking the same way as your peers, and your peers have gone before you, so you don't particularly want to challenge or confront or even sort of be seen to perhaps criticize what's gone before. And tribal behavior is very deep rooted, and that's one of the features that this industry and others you know, grew on, just accepting that this was the way things were. And I've never been particularly comfortable with accepting this is the way things are. Too restless.
And I think it's so important to challenge yourself as well. There's no shame in admitting that it's challenging to work with and speak to people who are not like you, who do not look like you, who do not share your values. But it's so important to challenge yourself, because that's when interesting work happens. That's when people become empowered and inspired, and we have different views and different perspectives that we know make the UK and the global music scene so brilliant. I think that like acknowledging that kind of unconscious bias and just challenging it always is so important.
Bear in mind that we were not completely blameless, us as the female race. When the AIM board was open to nominations, women did not run for the board. So, you know, we have to look at ourselves. We have to say, why is it that we don't see ourselves, or we feel uncomfortable? And I can assure you that sitting at board level is not always comfortable, but that goes for men and women, you know. But we seem to think that because we feel comfortable and we feel self-conscious and we feel that our voices won't chime or won't be respected, we self-excluded. And that's what I found so very worrying, that we had elected to self-exclude ourselves. Nobody had said, you cannot come into this room.
How did you go about challenging those attitudes, those behaviours?
Well, the first thing I did, Vic, was take a whole lot of women out for lots of drinks.
Yeah.
Just took them out and said, look, you know, this is my truth. I run an organisation. I'm a woman. I want to see you in the decision-making rooms. And you are not even running for the board. What is the problem? So I just went and asked lots of women, what is the problem? And there were two key themes that came out of it. And one of them isn't perhaps as flattering as you might like, but I'm fairly blunt and honest about this. And I think it's best to, you know, to confront why we think we've been excluded. So one was confidence. Clearly there was a massive confidence issue, massive. And I think a great deal of great work's been done to address that, and more work will always be done. And people like myself, people like Vic, will always be here to help to address and improve that sort of skill, because some people are born with a lot of confidence and some people have to acquire it. And it's not about being loud and aggressive and strident. It's about finding the way that your voice communicates in an effective way. That's really what you're looking at in terms of confidence. The second point was less flattering. Okay, so all you ladies on listening to this, please don't throw virtual brickbats at me. But the fact was, and this was a fact, that women sat in offices around the industry doing great work. They would work hard, they would work tirelessly, they worked at senior levels or middle management levels. But they genuinely thought that somebody was going to come along and recognize their brilliance and give them a leg up. They genuinely thought that if they sat there being great, eventually somebody would come and take control of their career. And I have to tell you, that is a weakness in us that that I think we allow to be exploited, actually, because then you end up being that great secretary. I couldn't go to work without my PA. I mean, one of the most, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the lady, but one of the first Women in Music Awards that I went to, which was before mine, we started our own sort of 7 years ago, one of the awards went to one of the chairmen of the major record company's secretary, because he said he couldn't do his job without her. And I sat there thinking, wait a minute, you know, I'm sure she's a lovely lady, however. So we sit there waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to be recognized. And I think you'd sit a long time. So, I mean, I'm putting that out there. I know it's quite controversial, but I can assure you that came through loud and clear.
No, I feel like that really relate to that as part of my journey. I feel when I started in the industry, there weren't many or any female managers that I knew, and I fell into that trap for maybe the first decade of my career of actually just thinking that I'm just going to do the best job and I'm going to get recognized for that. And I found myself being sidelined and you know, going to shows and not being able to get into my shows because people wouldn't believe I'm the manager, and other people taking credit for my work, or me going to video shoots that I've set up and commissioned, and being, as soon as I walked in, being told, oh, you're the stylist, or, you know, being treated constantly in this way. And I realized eventually, and how I changed that was acknowledging that I had to take accountability for some of my actions too in that situation, because without me taking accountability and starting to change my behavior, I won't be able to change anything in my circumstances. And once I started to, you know, I've always been a confident woman, I've always been great at my job and confident in my work, but I feel you can get into the habit of allowing yourself to be pushed to the side and just getting on with your work. And like you said, Alison, I feel like women tend to do this. We feel like we'll just do a great job and we're going to get acknowledged for our work, and we feel like we'll rise above and in our work, and we'll keep advancing in our careers by doing this. However, men work on creating more strategic relationships and use that to advance their careers. So I started to make some conscious changes with how I spoke about myself, how I put myself out there more. And once I started to do that, I noticed I was being changed in the way that I was being perceived, and also the way that I was being received. So I do think it definitely comes down to confidence. I think there's, you know, we've all talked about the issues that we know are out there, and we can see the, you know, with the stats as well, like that you've produced, it's black and white. You can see there is a, you know, a big gender gap, and there is an issue that needs to be corrected. But we as women do need to take positive action to make that change for ourselves as well. And I can tell you that I'm a testament to saying that as soon as I've started to believe in myself and put myself out there and be more vocal and lose that fear and push myself forward for things, that so much more has come to me, and I've been able to grow so much more in my career.
There you go.
Can I just jump in there and say, it's not, you know, we can't on our own fix the industry. We can maybe improve ourselves in all the ways that you're talking about, but still the problems in the industry are not ours on an individual level to fix. The structures and attitudes of people in the industry have to change as well. So you're talking about unconscious bias and stereotypes. I think one of the biggest barriers for women advancing is stereotypes. So if women are judged on being warm, how warm and nice and lovely they are, men are judged on how competent and how strong and brave they are. And if any of the genders breaks those stereotypes, there's pushback. So women who are seen as overly competent but and therefore not warm are viewed in a sort of suspicious way. Or that woman, you know, she's a cold whatever. She might be good at her job, but, you know, we don't like her. So there's lots of complicated feelings that are very, very different for men as they are women, and women think this as well. This is not just men thinking this. There's loads of research that shows that women are judged much more harshly than men. So you can be as confident as you like and go for your promotions and be pushy and you know, but you won't be responded to as a woman. You won't be responded to or encouraged or accepted in the same way as men are. So I think, you know, this unconscious bias training is really key. We all need to change our attitudes. It's really hard because, you know, we have these attitudes in society. It's in our families, it's growing up, it's in our schools, it's in popular culture, it's everywhere. But we have to really get down to the nitty gritty, and challenge the opinion that men make better leaders. Men make better. I just also want to say something else very controversially. It is interesting to me, Alison, that you and I and Maxie's last boss have all been women, leaders in the music industry, who in the past 2 years have been replaced by men.
Mm.
So this is not, you know, this is not something which is improving or going away. We have to be vigilant to this all of the time. Now, I'm sure all of the men who've replaced Vanessa Reed and you know, and you and I, Alison, I'm sure they're great. But where are we going backwards in terms of women leaders in the music industry? We have to keep vigilant to this all of the time, and challenge our unconscious biases, for sure. I think that's key.
I totally agree. I think like obviously that's yeah, totally true. I think it's also important that we acknowledge that the burden of fighting for equality should not just be on women and women leaders. It's allies are super important too. And like, without sounding defensive, to your last point, like Joe Franklin is a really important ally that kind of truly believes in intersectional feminism, and is kind of leading the Key Change movement brilliantly at the moment. And I think that it's important that we acknowledge that equality will positively affect everyone, not just women, not just people watching this panel. It will make the music industry and the music that we listen to more interesting, more diverse, and more representative of the communities and the voices that we live with. So I think that you're totally right, and I do feel like kind of there's like progress is happening. But I agree that it's important to monitor these things, and research is the only way to keep a check on workforces and senior positions, and keep monitoring the split of that, so that we can challenge the structures that mean that there are fewer CEOs and leaders at the moment.
Yeah, and I agree with what you said as well, Vic, about women being judged more harshly. And I've recently experienced that myself. I went on One Extra to talk about my experiences as a woman in the music industry. And when the video was released, I got so many comments about how I looked and how I was dressed, because I had a baseball cap on. And they were like, oh, she needs to dress like a manager. That's why she didn't get into the show, because she didn't look like a manager. And I just thought that was so interesting and weird to bring up, because all the managers that I know, and all the male managers that I know amongst my community, they all wear tracksuits, or they can wear whatever they want, and they don't get judged in the same way. Alison, did you want to say something?
Well, I did. I mean, everything that you and Maxie and Vic have said in the last 10 minutes is spot on. Conscious bias runs deep. It's toxic, and it's dangerous. But it's with us. It's a bit like COVID, actually. It's kind of everywhere and nowhere, you know, and you're going to come across it. In my career, I've been called difficult, impossible, menopausal, premenopausal, postmenopausal, you name it. You know, when I've challenged an assumption or expressed an opinion that might be different or controversial, the labels have come out. So they've come out behind my back, and even sometimes to my face. I did an interview with Women's Hour not so very long ago, and the woman opened by saying, I hear you're the most difficult person in the music industry. Is that right? That's the first thing she said to me. That was Jenny, what's her name? You know, so I had to kind of really get on my front foot just to navigate that. So what I'm going to say is that, you know, it isn't going to go away quickly, and you're going to have to develop quite a tough carapace, quite a tough exterior. Know that the purpose which is whatever your job is, because I'm quite job oriented, I'm quite goal oriented, I'm quite, do the best you can in the role that you occupy. So it's really not about yourself. People will try and personalize things. People will try and undermine you and your confidence by personalizing your input. But you've got to stay very true to the point of your role. And if you think about the job, the structure, the goals, the artist, the business, whatever it is, you will quickly find that those slights, those insults, those slurs look rather silly because you will be more successful. And when you're more successful, people start to grudgingly respect you, because despite them trying to undermine you, you keep going, you keep going. You've got to be tenacious, you've got to be tough, and you've probably got to be quite single-minded and self-driven.
And Alison, like, what advice would you give to any women that are looking to go for a senior level role or want to get a promotion or a pay rise within their current role? Like, how do you get into this, the boys club, or how do you treat, or how do you act? Are you meant to think like a man or talk like a man and try and adapt yourself to
Never. Do not betray who you are. I mean, that's, I think, one of the first mistakes you can make, is to try and become like a blokey bloke. If you want to be like a bloke, fine, but if you want to become like that, if you want to try and impress them that way, all you're doing is pandering to that mindset that I talked about earlier, which is so lazy. So you might become a token boy. Now, that hasn't gotten you anyway. It might have gotten you down the pub, might have gotten you under the table and a few other places as well, but it won't have furthered your career at all. So my advice would be, first of all, and Vic would, I'm sure, support me on this, research the roles, benchmark the salaries, find out what the skill set is, look around those people that you work with to see whether you are qualified, you are able to fulfill that job successfully. And, with a quiet confidence that you've benchmarked the salary, the position, the skill set, then bring to the interview the positives that you will add to the company's strategy by being a woman. Sell yourself as a woman, your emotional intelligence, your pragmatism, your ability to calm things down a little and let, make decisions, base decisions on not just sort of testosterone, but cool-headedness. I think we are pretty cool-headed as business people.
I'd like, on that point, sorry, Alison, I'd like to challenge what does it mean to talk like a man? I mean, I speak with confidence and power in meetings that I'm in, and that's not talking like a man. That's owning my voice and kind of treating every relationship and meeting seriously as a woman in music, as someone who plays with gender a bit, both professionally and personally, and kind of representing myself. I think that you don't, like Alison says, you don't have to betray who you are, and you don't have to follow gender stereotypes and gender roles in order to succeed in music. I mean, I think that, like, of course there are structures that we have to navigate, but I think we need to break down these kind of gendered assumptions about what success looks like in music. It's not working ridiculous hours all the time and shouting at people, being aggressive in a masculine way. It's about kind of harnessing who you are and what you bring to the table with confidence and support. And I think that, like, definitely in my team and in my environment, the most powerful thing and the most powerful thing that I can do is listen and respond with openness and kind of try to empower the people around me to be leaders themselves. I think that, like, that people might say that's masculine or feminine or whatever. I think that, like, it's important that people develop their voice and can navigate their career without gender. And like, we're not there yet, but I think that we often think that we have to try and fit into this industry and this structure that is predetermined. And yes, there are the barriers, and there is a lack of representation, but I think we're existing in the music industry at quite an exciting time. When I started out, I felt like I had to change to fit, and I kind of had to perhaps hide my sexuality or not be vocal about being a woman in music and talking about the barriers that I faced. But now I think that you can get a lot of power from that, and you can, to some extent, mold and change the environment that you work in for the better. And that's what I'm like very proud to do every day with Key Change, is kind of and something that I take very seriously, the responsibility to keep progressing. We do not know all of the answers, and as Vic said, it's not going to change in a day and just because you want it to. But I think that we are kind of working at a time where progress is very exciting, and research like Vic's is informing, and the kind of talent development programs like Key Change, the networks like She Said So, mean that you do have these little communities as women in music, or as trans people in music, or as non-binary people in music. You can find your space and feel supported and empowered by it. So I would encourage everyone who's watching to find their space.
Nice words. I think, you know, what's amazing about working in the music industry is you can be yourself. You can, you know, you can even be a CEO or a leader, and be able to, you know, creatively express yourself in some way. I mean, that was, for me, that was always one of the joys and the positives about the music industry, not having to wear a suit, you know, and yeah, just having your personality come to the fore. I think that is one of the great things about the music industry, despite all of the other problems.
Yeah, and I do think, like, obviously, you know, it's great that we're having this conversation, and there are so many initiatives out there, like you guys mentioned, that are actioning change, and, you know, the work that all of you are doing is actioning change. But, you know, every day in the industry, women are facing discrimination or sexism within their role. I recently went on a international tour, and I was taking on a lot more responsibilities to help out. So I was dealing with a lot of tour production, and the way that I was treated on the tour, I was the only female on the tour. I was just spoken to rudely and dismissed on a daily basis, and it's a really isolating experience. It can be, as a woman and being the only female traveling on a tour. And there was a huge international artist there who at one point in the tour came into the dressing room where there was lots of artists, guys and girls, and he proceeded to meet and greet every single guy, and just looked at me and just gave me a dirty look, and then like greeted the guy to the left of me, gave me a dirty look, and then greeted the guy to the right of me. And something that's really helped me has been bringing awareness to it by talking about it, because I feel like the more women I've spoken to have similar experiences like this, but we're embarrassed to talk about it, where we want to just, you know, paint the perfect picture on social media and just talk about how amazing our jobs are, how amazing our tours are. But I think it's really important to challenge those and actually speak about what really happens. So what advice would you give to anyone that has been discriminated against or has experienced sexism in their workplace? What would you advise that they can do or should do?
Well, you know, first of all, I'm really sorry to hear that story. It's just disgraceful. I feel ashamed for the human race that you had to experience that. But I would also say, and repeat what I said earlier, it's a tough world. We're not going to get any favours. And in the short term, you know, just trying not to take it personally, trying not to internalise it, trying to realise that they are the arseholes, not you, will help you to sort of get over it. And I've had that experience many times myself. And, you know, concentrating on the goal will minimise the pain. And also realising that you're brighter, you're cleverer, you don't deserve that. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible story.
Yeah,
it's so terrible. I think it's a question.
How should we deal with that?
How do we deal with that? Yeah, what advice would you give to anyone that's facing?
Well, I think if it's sexual discrimination, if you experience sexual discrimination that is about sex. You know what I mean? People hitting on you and I know that goes on a lot. I think the MU is still running their report line, and they have a lawyer that will take it seriously and take it for free. And I think that everybody here needs to take it seriously, because until it's called out, it will continue. And it's a lot less prevalent than it used to be, because of the raising of awareness through the, Weinstein, which I call willy waggling. It's only a type of willy waggling, really, isn't it? But I think that it's been raised, and if you experience it, you should take action. You should certainly report it to your senior, and you should expect some kind of intervention. And if you're not getting that support from your line manager, or you don't have a line manager, or you do have a line manager but they don't take you seriously, take it offline, take it externally. Go to the MU, go to I don't know whether the Diversity Task Force does anything like that, Vic, I don't know. But, certainly just don't accept that it's your lot and you should have to put up with it anymore, because it's just blatant behaviour and it needs to be challenged. So I don't think you can be complacent about it. I really don't.
I'm now I don't know if you know, Alison, I've just joined the board of the ISM. As a director as well. Just can't stay away from these membership organisations, and they've got the same thing. They've got free legal advice for their members, and the majority of their members are women. They have a lot of music teachers. So yeah, I think they've done some research into this as well. Yeah, they found nearly half of their members had experienced sexual harassment, but 3/4 of them didn't report it or do anything about it because they were scared of the victimization, the backlash, the what could happen next. They don't want a bad reputation. It's very thorny. I mean, if you have evidence, then yes, you absolutely should report it and do something about it. But I think for a lot of people, it's just about you don't have to stay in toxic environments. Even if it's a fantastic job and it's working with somebody who's very famous, at the end of the day, I think you've got to find your good people to work with. You've got to find a good team to work with, no matter how glamorous or amazing you think a certain situation is. If there's harassment or bullying or any sort of bad behaviors, move on. Go find some great people to work with.
Yeah.
But I say before you move on, make it very clear to the people that created that toxic environment that they are guilty of reprehensible behaviour themselves. And
I think
you have to confront it.
And it's on everyone in that work environment to make sure that the culture is supportive and people are able to call out and be called out. I think that's really important if culture change is going to happen. But I think, personally, it's also important that you don't put too much pressure on yourself as a victim to go through a specific process towards recovery. I think that take it seriously in yourself and make sure that you kind of represent that with everything around you, whether you report it or not. The women are twice as likely to suffer from PTSD as well. So I think that take the time that you need and make sure that you ask for that support. Whether it's about kind of immediately trying to get someone reprimanded for what's happened, think about yourself in that process as well, because I think that that your recovery is as important as the kind of the progress that the music industry makes as well.
And what about gender discrimination in the recruitment process? What would you say if you feel that you've been discriminated against because solely of your gender? Should you speak out? Should you say something about it? Should you address it to them?
I would. I would. I mean, women, we still get asked, in interviews, and I've definitely had guys, beating around the bush, but still, when I was younger, in my 30s, sort of pushing the question on whether I would be having more children. I mean, as it was, you know, I had twins when I was 29. That was enough. I was done. But I definitely got the feel, you know, and yeah, you have to call them out because it's not acceptable.
Agree.
And yeah, we don't have a lot of time left, so I do want to just touch on this because obviously we've spoken so much and covered everything that I wanted to cover, but obviously we talked a lot about diversity, but one thing that obviously organizations need to have and take into account is diversity, but diversity does not equal inclusion, and that's another thing that companies need to seriously look at in their internal practices. So the McKinsey's 2020 report was released a month ago, called Diversity Wins, How Inclusion Matters, actually found that companies with greater gender diversity were 25% more likely to experience above average profitability compared to their counterparts. And also companies with greater ethnic and cultural diversity were 36% more likely to experience above average profitability to compare to their counterparts. So I, similarly to your report that you've released, Vic, I love having data like this. I just think that once we've got this information, we're able to use this to our advantage and to our power, and take that into those conversations when we're having those conversations. And like you said, Alison, to sell yourself as a woman and bring up points like that, bring up what you can add to companies.
I'll just say that I think it's so important that we talk about safety, and if we're going to encourage diversity across the board, which is so important, those people need to be entering into safe working situations that support them in their diversity. So I mean, my identity as a woman in music is informed by my queerness and by the fact that I've got a long-term health problem. And I think that, like, we have to be intersectional in our approach to diversity and acknowledge that inclusion means responding to what people need in nuanced ways and understanding what they need and taking the time to do that, not just filling quotas. It means kind of, yeah, making positive change, but also acknowledging that has consequences in terms of ways of working and ways of understanding. And I think it's important that organizations are flexible and open to that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the music industry needs to hold itself up as an embracer of change, because this is the music industry. You know, we're supposed to be fast moving, we're supposed to be agile, we're supposed to be early adopters, highly creative. You know, we have, you know, lots and lots of people with dyslexia and other learning disabilities who achieve amazing things in the music industry. So the music industry has all the ingredients to be a leader in diversity and inclusion. And I think that's a message that, you know, I've been working at getting through to the chairman of the big companies, and, you know, along with, you know, government guidelines now around gender parity, pay parity, inclusivity, disability, etc. I think we could be really influential in, and we could be a leader as an industry in demonstrating the huge benefits from running modern companies with supportive environments for all stripes of people, because creativity itself, which is what we make our livings on, is best expressed in glorious technicolor, not in cookie cutter.
I love that.
Yeah, that's incredible. So yeah, literally have a few minutes left, so I'm going to take some questions, and hopefully, if you guys don't mind staying a couple of minutes over, I'll try to get through as many as I can of these. But first question is for Vic, from an anonymous attendee. Is the F list still open for submissions, and how do we get on it?
Definitely. Well, people can message me through via the actual Google Sheet or my website or my Twitter feed. At the minute, I'm also rebuilding the website. I'm going to relaunch the F List website on a beautiful WordPress directory, which will look gorgeous and have better search facilities, and I'm going to grow it and grow it. So absolutely, I want more women to contact me and get and be added to it. So it becomes it's a growing living resource. So we're delighted to hear from as many women as possible to get added onto it.
I'm going to add my band too, Vic.
Yeah, definitely.
And just to say, like, it's I think that we have an opportunity as well, because with the Key Change Gender Pledge, obviously we're encouraging organizations to try and achieve 50% representation for women and gender minorities in all aspects of their work by 2022. And Vic's resource is awesome for signposting talent that they can book in order to achieve that goal. So right on. And yeah, and we will also encourage our Key Change participants to sign up for that too, Vic.
Please do, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
And Laura actually emailed this question in as well, so I definitely want to get to this one. She said that last year she ran for a place on the MPA board, and she was tied for the final place, but she didn't get it by 2 votes. And her question is, should she run again for it? She feels like how much of an impact can she make? Small businesses like hers are underrepresented. However, because I'm the only person running my business, I'm not sure I have the time. Yeah, so should she run again? Or should she keep doing what she's doing and find another way to be visible?
Well, the time issue is real, because if you're going to join a board, particularly a board which is, you know, representative of a sector of an industry like publishing or the independents or whatever, then you, in order to fulfill that responsibility well, you do have to be able to devote the time. And I think you do have to bring to the table a degree of experience. It's not a place for very young, very inexperienced young people. There are other places in the industry for everybody. But I think, therefore, it's difficult to answer that question, any one of us to answer that question. My gut says, of course you should run again. Of course you should run again. But the time issue is one you have to address. You have to make the time. I think that if you're on an industry board, you're probably looking at devoting at least 10-15% of your time to that work. Would you say, Vic, that's about right?
Well, it depends on the board, but absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm probably spending a day a week, I think, you know, because I sit on three boards at the minute. And I want to give them the proper attention to read the papers and think about things and attend the meetings and so on. So it is a time commitment, but it's a privilege to do as well. But I don't know how old this woman is, but I think there's all sorts of young leadership development programs that might be really good to look at as well. There's the Young Guns Network and other sort of baby boards.
Yeah.
So she might want to talk to the MPA and have a conversation about what are they doing about talent development for young business publishers out there. They might be up for starting a baby board off. So that might be something that she could discuss with them.
And we had quite a few questions actually about becoming a board member from Sheena and also Portia, who's a freelance consultant in the industry. And she's asked, how would somebody go about being a board member? Is there a process? Do you have to be invited by someone, or is there a website, or what's the process to becoming a board member?
Well, I mean, there are boards and there are boards. If it's a company board, that's a different thing to, say, an industry representative body, their board. They will all have their rules. You just go onto the website and you check what the rules are, because the rules are governed by the constitution of the company. So it's simply a question of doing your research and finding out what the criteria are for eligibility for a board position. And then there's your level of experience and your time commitment, and that's about it. If you want to go down that road, and I would suggest anybody that has the experience and the time should consider it, because it's an incredible learning experience. I've learned so much around the tables of so many tables in the UK and across the world. It's an incredibly enriching experience to be exposed to, you know, divergency. We're talking about inclusivity, but divergent opinions, how to manage conflict, how to resolve arguments, you know, how different nationalities think about things, and by the way, think about us as Brits. You know, it's you know, you get challenged in so many ways. But if you are serious about doing it, I would suggest that you look at the current board members and invite one of them to lunch and say, I've been thinking about this, what do you think? Do you think I'd be qualified? Start with a one-to-one and start to build a picture of how the board operates, what the expectations are, and how you would be perceived, if you like, your approach. Just start with one person and take them to lunch or take them for a drink and just say, oh, you know, I'm interested to know more. Or take the CEO.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Such good advice. So just take one more question, because I know we've run over a little bit. And this is from Laura Baker. So thanks for joining us today, Laura. She said, thanks, Andy, this is great. Do the panel think that being a female parent in the music business particularly challenging? And what industry or company level changes would they like to see to enable women who have families to progress in the music business?
Well, I mean, both Vic and I have been parents, are parents. I don't, Maxie, have you got any kids? You're probably...
No, I don't yet.
No, yet. Nadia, you got any kids?
Don't yet either.
Right, well, I've got 2, Vic's got 2, so that makes 4. My advice would be that, you know, we've got enormous reserves. I mean, I have dug deep sometimes when my kids have been sick, or I've been sick and the job's still there and you've still got to get up and you've still got to get the sandwiches in the whatever. And, you know, we just have enormous resilience, much more than we know. And I sometimes have touched bottom when I've been really exhausted, but keeping going and keeping focused and compartmentalizing also, I have to say, guilty as charged, you know, kids here, job here, home here, and that way you'll keep sanity just about within reach.
It is hard, but I found having kids really focused me, made me much more ambitious. I mean, I was a single parent from the off, you know, and I just thought, oh my God, it's just down to me. So I became super focused, super ambitious, I've got to get my career back on track in a way that I don't think would have happened if I hadn't had kids. So they gave me a lot of strength and encouragement, even if every single week was a total nightmare to arrange childcare and everything. It was really hard. Yeah. But one of the biggest things I think companies can do is to start to value part-time workers and flexible workers as much as they do their full-time workers. So the biggest driver of the pay gap is the fact that part-time work, which is majoritively done by women attempting to balancing parenting and caring careers with their home duties, part-time work is far, I mean, it's something like 25% less paid than full-time work, even if they're doing, you know, important jobs in those part-time roles. So I think all employers need to have a look at how they are valuing in terms of money, remuneration, and opportunities with their flexible workers. So I think that that's for me that's what stands out, and all of the research and what have you that I'm doing right now, which I'm looking a lot at the pay gap and the drivers of that. Value part-time workers. Women need to be paid better in flexi work. You know, as we've seen right now, we're all flexible working right now. So yeah.
I can't speak from a parent point of view, but I can say what we've done in terms of talent development and supporting artists and innovators to engage with Key Change who are parents. We basically ring fence some money so that everyone who has childcare needs can still come to festivals and pay for a carer to come with them, can still take part in panels, can still showcase, take part in the network, can still access everything that they need to do. We just gave them a bit of extra money so that they get that support, and the same for access needs too. So I think it's just about saying this opportunity is for you as a parent. As whoever you come to the table, you are welcome to join us, and we'll support you to do that. And we're trying to do that as much as possible with Key Change.
And I want to make one more point, which is a little bit provocative, but I'm not a great fan of this idea of part-time when flexi time is what it is. I know several mums in the industry who've accepted that they'll go down to 4 days a week, and they've accepted a pay cut of 20% as a result. You know what happens? They end up working 5, 6, 7 days a week, as we always do. If the job needs to be done, it gets done. So juggling time, we're very organised. We tend to be very good at, managing our time. I always suggest that flexi time is not, or part-time. If you're doing the job, but you're doing some of it remotely, as we all are, don't accept a pay cut. Do not accept a pay cut, because you will still be performing at the same level, just in a different way. This is the 21st century. All those, being there and being seen to be there stuff, it's so old-fashioned.
Amazing. Thank you so much, ladies. I really appreciate you guys giving the time. It's just been a really inspiring and empowering conversation, and something close to my heart. I would love to continue the chat for like all day, because I've just had the best time talking to you guys, and what an incredible way for me to end my lockdown webinar series as well with you ladies. So I really appreciate you all giving the time. And did you, if you want to add anything else before we close, then?
I think having initiatives like this, supporting women, supporting each other, I think that's the way to go. It's brilliant.
Just to say, I'm happy to share my email if anyone wants to get in touch about Key Change or any of the work that we're doing at PRS Foundation, or if you want to chat, if you have any questions following it, yeah, just get in touch.
And I'm happy to do the same, whether it's public speaking workshops or mentoring or executive training and managing meetings. I mean, all these things do require a level of skill, which I didn't come into the industry with, and nobody taught me. I had to learn it myself the hard way. And one of the greatest privileges is to be able to give back to an industry that I've been privileged to work in all my life.
Brilliant. You were always my role model, Alison.
Yeah, you are my role model. I was so nervous talking to you, Alison, and it's just been so inspiring. I really appreciate all the advice that you've given, and I probably will email you as well, so expect one from me. But yeah, people are asking if the webinar is available to replay. I do send out a replay link so you can watch it. I'll hopefully get that out tomorrow, and then you can also have a link there to replay any of the previous webinars. Thanks for joining me on my lockdown webinar experience. It's been incredible, and yeah, thanks ladies again. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Thank you so much, Nadia. Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.